What's up, guys? I'm gonna be going over my Slayer tone that I use for my Boss Katana Mark II artist, and um, I'll give you all the information and I'll walk through the whole thing. But if you want to skip the video and just download the thing and get to work, here's what you need to do. Besides just running the tone, you should use these global EQ settings. It's very basic. All it does is it low cuts at 80 hertz and it high cuts at 6.3 kilohertz with a 1 decibel boost, because they don't give you an option of 7, so it's either 8 or 6.3. So I just boosted up one. It's very slight change, but just to roll off the low end and high end. That's the only thing. I can't like send that in the download, so you have to do that yourself. And it's just gonna fix. It's not gonna be too bassy, and it's not gonna be too fizzy at the top end. But with the way that I mixed it, it's already not, anyways. So, I also wanted to say that this whole tone is based off of Lamb Chopper's Slayer tone, which, if you've never watched his video, the tone that he got is incredible. However, it's not really the same when you download his tone, because he's using a specific type of speaker. So he was not using the waza speaker, which is found in the artist, and I have the Mark II artist. But this will also work for the Gen 3 artist, I assume, because they both have the waza speaker, and I'm assuming the settings will be the same. I don't know if you can still download it for that one, but you can just look at this and copy the settings. I've made this in a way where you don't need any pedals for it. However, I personally run a physical tube screamer. I run a physical noise suppressor in the 4-cable method. All these. I run a bunch of pedals because I want to. However, you don't need to, and I have it all set up for you, so you can toggle certain things on and off if you don't need them. So let's get into it. So this is Lamb Chopper's tone that he did, and I'll be going over mine, which I called Slayer Artist, for just so when you download it, it's pretty obvious what it's for. But so Lamb Chopper's tone, this is the Rain and Blood version, but I just renamed it Lamb Chopper. One thing he does that I really like is he uses the crunch channel. The brown channel, I feel like it adds a lot of noise a lot of the time, and it's difficult to really harness. The lead channel's great. It's just like the crunch channel, except you need to use a lot less gain, but the lead channel adds some high frequencies that you might not want there. The clean, I feel like I'm always fighting to get more out of it, and I don't use the acoustic. So the crunch channel is a great channel, and it really doesn't matter what people say. You can EQ everything, so that if you use lead or crunch or even brown, different EQs will basically get you to a similar way. But here's the things that I didn't particularly enjoy when I downloaded his tone, and this is not his fault, because he made his tone for his system, his speaker. And his tone is also meant to go into a recording. It was going into a mic or something. So there was a ton of different things going on. So what I tried to do is capture that and put it into like more of a live tone. So number one, his gain was too high for me. Certain things he did with the equalizer didn't particularly make sense, like the fact that this, like, why didn't he just drop the 31 lower? Why did it raise up here? This makes pretty much a lot of sense here, decently at least. I didn't use whatever they call this, the Gov DS. I didn't use this one. I used the Tube Screamer because Slayer used the Tube Screamer. But you get a basically similar sound out of both of them. I turned off his delay I turned off his delay because they don't really use delay. So, and it made very little difference. I thought his reverb was good, but it was too much time, so it ended up having too much effect. And so I basically halved the time. And I'll go over that. And also his noise suppressor settings I didn't really agree with. I thought he should set the release to 0. And the threshold is whatever you need it to be for your system, so I can't say anything about that. My threshold is typically around 60. I found it works. So let's go over mine. Yeah, I mean, like I said, you can just download it and get to work, but this is more to go over exactly why. So I did this because I wanted to make something make sense in my head, and I also wanted to make it work for my system for the artist much better. So first off, I'm going to start with the chain. The chain is extremely important in that you need to know what's coming and when. So the booster, which is the tube screamer, comes first, and I run the physical, so I turn this off, but I also have this at settings that are similar to what you would have if you had about a minimum drive, if not like just barely notched up, a maximum level in a neutral tone. This gives you a very similar effect with these settings as that type of tube screamer. You know when you're running a tube screamer like a boost, you run it like that. And so this, with these settings, gives you a very similar sound. If you run the effect level up higher, it's just way too much because all this is digital, so they're able to, I don't know, go a lot crazier with it. So, but back to the chain. So the booster comes first, then the amp equalizer, which is all this stuff, but that doesn't really quite tell the story here. What I have coming after the booster, directly after, is actually my amp in EQ. And this is what I call the tone shaper, or what I would also consider to be the violence EQ. You're adding violence to these mid frequencies, the 1 and 2K, some 4K, and all this stuff. You're basically making this frown that's kind of slid over to the right, and very, very small changes are not necessarily going to make a huge deal here, but essentially what I'm doing is I'm rolling off the low end so that it's not farty sounding, it's not getting hit with a bunch of gain. And I'm also made sure that when the EQ is on and off, the volume level is the same, so I don't have to mess with the level. So that's kind of like a professional way to mix an EQ, is to try to get it so that your EQ, when it's on and off, is the same volume level. So that's why, if you drew a straight line through this, it would be similar. It would be about midway. So you'd have some stuff above it, some stuff below it. So in the chain, that first EQ, because it's set to amp in, is actually coming between the booster and the amp equalizer. The next thing that gets hit is the amp equalizer, but once again, that doesn't necessarily tell the story. The next thing that gets hit is actually the crunch channel and then the gain. So I guess you would call that the distortion or whatever. And then the equalizer on the amp, and I just have it all set to 50 50 50 because I didn't want to mess with that, because I actually have my EQ my EQs after that. So here's what comes after this. What comes after this is the mod. Now no, that's not true. What comes after this is EQ2, which is set to amp out EQ, and that's used as a parametric notch EQ. I'm notching out some bad frequencies, and the same thing with the mod. So if you look at here, right after the amp EQ is the EQ2 and then the mod. They're literally the same thing. So it's confusing the way that it is, but it just makes everything go in the order I wanted to. So I notched out those sounds. Then finally, the FX is actually it acts similar to my global EQ. It just doesn't come before the reverb, but I'm essentially volume balancing with my FX, my graphic EQ, at the end. So I'm bringing back the low end, and I'm cutting the mids a little bit just to balance out the volume of it. I'm not tone shaping here. And once again, making sure that when it's on and off, the volume is the same, so I don't have to mess with the level. So yeah, so one of my notch EQs, I notched out 400 hertz and 630 hertz. Definitely not. You're gonna have to notch out 630 with the Boss Katana. And I use an 8 Q band. I find 16 is a little too narrow and it doesn't necessarily hit the frequency enough. And I find 4, you just aren't getting, you're probably hitting too much at that point. So 8's a good one. -4 decibels. It's like that -4 I find is a pretty good sweet spot. And when it's on and off, I had to actually add 1 decibel, but that's how you have to use a parametric. Sometimes you have to add a decibel. And the same thing with my mod. It's just another parametric that comes next, and 1.25, 1.6 cut out those frequencies. All right, and FX, just volume, bringing back, like I just said, bringing back the bass, cutting out the mids, no delay. Reverb, I just moved it down to 2.8 seconds. Modulate, I don't really care what the hell it is. I tried all these, but I found modulate was actually the least annoying, if that even makes any sense. The modulate just sounded good, and that's what he used, and I thought it was good. I really tried to use the plate, and I tried using the room, and I thought that those were kind of annoying. They were whatever they were. They just weren't. I just thought the modulate was nice. It's not a lot of reverb. It works so you can have it on all the time, and it's not going to muddy up the sound, but when you kind of get into those chugs, like in Raining Blood, it's still a little bit there. So I think it sounds pretty okay. No solo, so solo's off. So with this being on, I don't think this does anything. Contour is off. Pedal effects is off. Noise suppressor, once again, release at 0. That just makes it so that it's faster to move. The threshold is the amount that it's going to suppress. That's going to be determined by you. Send return is off, but I use it on because I have pedals, so I have a send and return loop, an FX loop. I also set the gain down to a lot less than what he had. I just thought he had too much gain for my type of thing, for my setup. What else? I really enjoyed the deep cab resonance. I found the vintage just lacked some clarity. It lacked some punch, and the modern just added some high frequencies that didn't need to be there. So the deep gave you the benefits of the modern, like punching through, but it didn't have those annoying high frequencies the modern did. So, but they were all fine. They were all fine. If I couldn't use the deep, I'd use the modern. Presence at 40 I thought was okay. It's not going to make a huge difference either way. It can increase the harshness, but yeah. I think that's pretty much everything. I really do think this is a pretty good tone. Most people's tone I've downloaded, it's really not, man. Some of this stuff out there is just crazy. I don't know how people decide to mix certain things, but I think this one's good. I think you'll be happy with it. I don't think you'll have to tweak it too much to be happy with it. It's not like super fizzy. It's not like it doesn't have like no mids. It's not super bassy. It's not killing you with gain. This gain looks really high, but the crunch channel, it's like it sucks the gain out. Like if I put it on a lead, yeah, this gain would be way, way, way too high. But because it's on the crunch channel, trust me, it balances it out. And I'm not trying to put in too much gain. Yeah, and the volume I've set it at 50 because I think everyone's volume should be set at 50 just for simplicity. I think I went over everything. Yeah, global EQ. That will That'll get you there. All right.